extension retapes. I got a lot of questions about those after I posted my last extension video. So I'm going to walk you through how I take the extensions out, how I retape them, how I position them back in the hair, and I'm also going to be doing the balayage as well, so stay tuned if you want to see it.
Alright, so these are my go-to extension products. So I have the gel remover, which I really love to take the extensions out, retapes, clips, a weave comb, and of course the wet brush. The reason I love this remover so much is because it's gel-based as opposed to alcohol or oil-based, so it doesn't leave the hair all gunky and gross like the other ones can, and it also doesn't dry the hair out. So it works really well saturating that hair, getting the tape out, not leaving residue, and I also don't have to wash or clarify the hair afterwards. So in this case, I'm taking her extensions out to color, but if I was just doing a normal retape, I could take one out and put it right back in and not worry about it falling out. So while retaping extensions, I recommend using one specific weave comb to do it because it usually ends up getting kind of gross and filled with tape and sticky. So I recommend just always having one designated comb, and then make sure you really comb through after you take the extension out and get that residue out so when you color the hair it's not still there. This step is really important only because you want to make sure you're placing the hair back in the head where it came out of. So I always divide it into 3 different sections, the back, the left, and the right, and that's how I retape my hair just to ensure that I'm putting it back in the correct place. Okay, here's for the fun part, mixing up the color. So I'm using Redken Flash Lift to balayage, and I like to mix it to a thicker consistency. Oh, I just ran out, had to use the rest of it. And I used 40 volume with this, and it's actually going to be diluted down to 30 volume with Olaplex. And these little tools that are sitting on the counter are some of my favorite things when mixing color. This whisk is really beneficial in getting your color mixed up, making sure the product doesn't have lumps in it. It's really smooth and fluid. So I love using this whisk for that reason. Alright, can't forget about Olaplex. So as I mentioned before, this is going to dilute my developer from 40 down to 30 volume. Olaplex is a really handy tool because it dilutes the product so it keeps it safe, but it's really mainly used for protecting the hair while bleaching. Now this spatula is another little tool I like to use. I use it to clean the edges of my bowl just to make sure that it looks nicer and a little more clean, but it also really helps mix the product in as well. So sometimes I'll just rotate using this or the whisk. It kind of just depends on what I'm feeling that day. I have a few different ways I like to balayage, so during this video I'm just going to kind of talk about the different methods I like to use. Right here I'm doing the V pattern, so I like to go up on each side, feather it up. I wear gloves, that way you can kind of run your fingers through it, and then I really saturate that bottom really well just to get those ends a lot lighter. Utilizing my hands and gloves really helps with this method. I like to take my fingers and kind of rub the product up, blend it in really well, make sure there are no harsh lines. Painting on your hand works really well too. This is one of my go-to ways of blending. So typically with my balayages, you guys have seen me use foil, but I decided to use saran wrap on this one. I actually do it quite often, I just never filmed it. And I think the benefits of using saran wrap are that it keeps the moisture in and you can kind of watch it process through the transparent saran wrap. I like foils because they keep the heat in, so I feel like you get more lift from it. Open air painting I really like, but I feel like I only do that if I want to achieve 1 to 2 levels of lift. So I feel like saran wrap's kind of in the middle of those two methods. So yeah, I recommend trying it out and just kind of seeing how you like using it. I am a fanatic about angles. I like to incorporate angles into my extensions, my coloring, everything. So as soon as I did that bottom layer, I actually do the next one on an angle behind the ear, and I do that on each side of the head, just because I feel like it makes it lay a little more naturally. And on this one, I did the V pattern as well, but as you can see, I'm taking my brush and I'm brushing upwards, and that's another way I like to blend as opposed to using my fingers, because I feel like it takes the product, spreads it up, and vanishes any harsh lines. along a zigzag part into this section, as you can see right here. I'm just going to start painting the product on, just kind of getting it all in there, rub it through with my fingers, make sure it's saturated really well. And then I'm going to use the blur brush to blur any lines that I have, and this is another way that I like to blend my balayages. As you can see, as I start using this tool, it really helps blend those lines in and just makes it look a little more natural rather than just like harshly painted on. So I really like to use that. I blend it downwards and upwards. So for this section, I'm weaving out, and then I'm just going to paint the product right on there and blend it up towards the root, just to give this one a little bit of a higher contrast. This one's going to be closer to the root, and that way it's going to help the other pieces blend really well. As I work my way up the head, I still am incorporating those angles, those zigzag partings. So for this one, that's what I did, if you can kind of tell right there. And then I put the saran wrap on, and if I feel like the product needs to be resaturated, I'll do that once the saran wrap's in place. There's a few different ways to remove the tape from the extensions. The first is just pulling it off like you see me doing here, and then I just put it on a piece of foil. And then I like to take these color remover pads and run them across the top of the tape-in tab just to make sure I get all that sticky residue off. You really don't want to leave any tape residue on there, because then it just builds layer after layer of tape and it makes it harder for the extensions to stay in the hair. So you just want to make sure it's really clean, and then I take a paper towel just to kind of get it really off, because sometimes the remover will leave it a little wet. And when you're retaping, it's really important to make sure it lines up really well on the hair, and I always go left to right just to make sure it stays centered on the tape-in tab. This is another way I like to remove the tape, so I'll just slide it across the foil, and most of the times the tape will just come right off, as you can see me doing. I know this seems like a lot of steps for each piece of hair, but I promise you in the long run, it's more important to take care of your client's hair and put them in the right way rather than have them leave and have them, fall out within a week because they weren't done correctly. So I do this with all my balayages. As it's processing, I take it out of the saran wrap or foil or whatever I wrapped it in, and I just comb through it to blur any lines and resaturate where it's needed. And I am, of course, using Redken Shades EQ to tone. I did 1 ounce of 8V and 1 ounce of 9P. So this is how I start off placing my extensions. The first one's towards the base of the head, and the next two are placed on an angle right above that, kind of behind the ear. And after I place those two angled pieces, I just continue to brick lay the extensions up the back of the head. When placing the actual extensions, it's really important to get the right amount of hair in between the two pieces. So make sure those corners are pulled out and there's no extra hair in between the two, because that's what's going to cause slippage and breakage. And then my tape and tabs are a little longer than the hair I use, so I just cut that little corner off so there's no lifting. And with retapes, I like to heat the top of the tape with my flat iron just to kind of activate that tape and get it to stick really well. Alright you guys, thanks for watching. Doing a voiceover video was a little different for me, but I decided to try it out just because sometimes the microphone's a little more clear without the background noise going on behind me. So if you learned something or you liked this video, make sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for watching.